Hello, everybody. We are going to continue with your questions, with the questions that some parents sent to us. Question 1. Do I need to worry if my daughter, 6 months old, doesn't quit much, but she started to sit and seems to be starting crawling soon? How can I encourage her to quit?
Well, I'm wondering if this person hasn't confused creeping and crawling, because usually you start with crawling first on your stomach, and then you move on to creeping. So
somebody told me that in British English it's the other way around.
Yeah, it is. I used to confuse it all the time myself. But yeah, crawling on your stomach, creeping on your hands and knees.
But in Doman's, I think in Doman's books it's your version.
It's because Glenn used to, when he was in the army, he would crawl on his stomach in his army drills. So that's why he called it crawling instead of the other way around. Anyway, so if your 6-month-old daughter doesn't crawl very much and she started to sit and seems to be crawling soon, unfortunately you just have to go with what she wants to do. It's hard to make her crawl on her stomach for longer, but some things you can do is play games with her, make some tunnels for her to go through. You can get a chair and encourage her to go under the chair, or you can just hold your arm over her back so she doesn't come up. But you have to kind of make it fun and try and encourage her to do as much crawling as possible. If she comes up into that sitting position on her own, then just let her go for it. But if you're putting her in that position, then I would absolutely stop doing that. And she will be able to do that when she starts to creep on all fours and when she has the trunk control enough to do that on her own.
Okay, thank you. Next question. How can we support the development of a child with SI, sensory integration disorder? She's a very active girl. She speaks fast and a lot. She's just 17 months and she speaks in sentences. This is not very unusual. She crawled and started to walk when she was 1 year old. She has always liked tight hugging, now a bit less. She climbs a lot. When touching, she puts a lot of force into it. She expresses her anger loudly and intensively. She's very sensitive to pain when she hits herself. However, she doesn't cry during blood testing. Long description. Visiting an osteopath helps, and I try to follow the recommendations concerning FI. However, the fact that she sometimes hurts constitutes the greatest challenge and the problem for me. She pulls her sister's hair. There are difficult moments when she cries, no breathing at times, bending her body. The osteopath said she doesn't have the peripheral pressure, but that she suffers from the internal pressure.
So there are a couple of different things going on for this little girl, and like the Doman program being holistic, you can't just fix one with one simple fix. So you need to do a combination of nutrition, of tactile integration, so stimulation. There's a bit of behavior going on, and also respiration as well. So first of all, the reason why she has this hyperactivity and that's that wanting to hurt other children usually is food sensitivities. There's something in her food that she's eating that is affecting her brain and making her have this hyperactivity. Secondly, she sounds like she is both hypersensitive and hyposensitive. So you can be hypersensitive where you feel textures or pain so much more than normal people, or you can be hyposensitive where you don't feel enough. So for example, she sounds to be very, very hypersensitive with textures, with being hurt sometimes, but in her arms with the needle with taking her blood, she's hyposensitive. She's not feeling the way she should. And you'll find that it's different all over her body. If she was to come in and I was to assess her tactility, I would test all over her body in every single area, and I would mark down whether she's hypo or hyper, and in which areas. And then depending on that diagnosis, I guess, would depend on what you would do stimulation-wise on those different parts. But basically, all you need to do is just get a range of different textures: rough, smooth, prickly, abrasive, a light touch, and just give her as much stimulation on the areas that you feel are lacking as much as possible. And with the pain, if she's sensing pain properly in some areas, but perhaps not really severe pain, then you do need to do a bit of pain stimulation. So maybe a pin, a sewing needle, and just maybe 8 to 10 times a day go over the area. Because what's happening is the dendrites in her body, dendrites are the little nerve endings that are under your skin. They're not perceiving well, and they don't have a very good connection from the skin to the brain. So we need to stimulate them to create a stronger, better signal and pathway so that she can either feel better or not feel as severely as she does. And I'm happy if you want to email me more specific stuff, and I can tell you a bit more kind of specifics on how to help her with that.
I'm just curious, will this stimulation help her control her behavior?
What was that, Aga? I missed the beginning.
Will this stimulation help her to control her behavior? Because her mom mentioned that she's hurting, she hurts other kids, and this is the problem.
So absolutely. I mean, it's not going to be a quick fix, but the reason why she perhaps pushes a bit too hard or pulls or bites perhaps, or she hugs really tightly, is because she's hyposensitive. She's not feeling touch in the same way that we do. So the only way for her to feel that is to be very rough, to really grab tightly, to pull someone's hair really strongly, to push or to bite. So in a way, if you help her tactile sensitivities, it will improve that behavior. And you have to be careful and get a good balance of behavior, and also the fact that it's not her fault. She doesn't realize that she's being overly strong. So it will definitely help a lot. And I promise that diet also will be a huge benefit as well for behavior. And you said down here too that she has problems with her breathing. So
while crying. When she cries, it's really like...
And she kind of gets her breath in.
Really intense.
Right, yeah. So, and breathing is also something that can affect the tactile sensitivities. The reason why her dendrites, her nerves, are not perceiving well enough is because of the lack of oxygen that is in her body and in her brain. So the more oxygen you can give her, the better that will improve, the more her ability to breathe, of course, will improve, and the clearer her mind will get, and then that will also help with the behaviors. So if you're listening, whoever wrote this question, please email me. I really recommend maybe coming for an appointment or looking into it, because we have our respiration program, which is what we call a breathing enhancement pack. And this is the best thing that's going to help you with tactile sensitivities, with behavior, and with her breathing when she gets upset. And from the sounds of it, with her other stuff, with the pressure and internal pressure, there's a lot more that we could do for you as well. But again, I'm happy if you want to just email me for specific recommendations.
Just to make sure she doesn't hurt kids on purpose. She doesn't realize it.
Well, I mean, it is that she's doing it. She's seeking out that behavior, but it's not with malice or intent to hurt. It's because the only way she can interact with that child or with that person to have that just a normal touch is to do it very forcefully, because she doesn't perceive. She may hug you really tightly or bite you even, and she doesn't realize how strong or how that feels for you, because she doesn't feel it barely at all.
Okay, thank you. Another one. What about a diet for a child suffering from cerebral palsy? My son has had an ultrasound, and it turned out he suffers from kidney calcification. How can I support them in a natural way?
Right, so that tells me that he has an elevated level of oxalates. So I have a form.
Oh,
Oxalates, yeah. I have a form about oxalates that I'll send to you, and it has a table of foods that are high in oxalates, medium, low, and then no oxalates. So the best thing to help with the kidney calcifications is to put him on a low oxalate diet. And that would be my recommendation for any child, regardless of CP. But because he has cerebral palsy, also the diet that I suggested earlier would also be the best place to start. Cerebral palsy, while it seems to affect the muscles directly, it's actually the brain. It's still an injury in the brain that is stopping the signals from the brain getting to the muscles. And of course, that causes rigidity, sometimes spasticity, and it causes those symptoms. So, I mean, all of our programs together is how we treat children with cerebral palsy. And depending on his level of mobility, it would be a different program. Diet would be, like I said, and respiration, the BEP pack that I was talking about, is also the number one thing to help with cerebral palsy, because that is a lack of oxygen causing that rigid tightness of your body. More oxygen, the looser your child can get. So again, email me and I'm happy to give you more information about that for your child in particular.
There is more information about this child.
Yes, I see.
And moves it sideways. He turns around when put on his belly. He tries to creep. So I mean,
I'm sure it's crawl.
You meant crawling, yeah, or I meant crawling because I've translated it. But he cannot control his legs and arms. His muscles are stiff and rigid, especially in the upper part of the body. Born with ischemia and the second level hemorrhage. There are holes in the white matter. So I think she definitely needs to contact you.
I really recommend it, and I can tell you that we have hundreds of children with the exact same diagnosis, with that hemorrhage that has damaged the white matter, and of course born with ischemia or suffered some kind of ischemia in their brain at some point. So it's definitely not something out of the ordinary, and we can absolutely help you to combat that. And with, okay, so he turns over when he's on his belly. So he's rolling, and rolling can be very detrimental to his development, because what happens is he's on his stomach and he rolls, and his brain thinks, oh, if I want to move, I roll. And so he doesn't learn how to creep and how to crawl.
As far as I remember, she meant like turning around.
Yeah, onto his back, right? Or do you mean, or do you mean like in a circle? Oh, in a circle. Okay. Easy
this
fix
message.
as well.
But
Easy fix as well.
Yeah, I've written turning around.
So he's moving in a circle. So one side of his body is obviously
in a circle. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and one more information. Yes, problem with sight, and this mom asks about some exercises to stimulate the eyesight.
Yeah. Okay. So he absolutely needs patterning, and you may have to do homolateral patterning depending on how much he moves. And inclined floor is going to be the best thing for him. And it's very common that we have children, especially CP children, who do go in a circle. And all we do is we just make what we call a movable wall. And all that is just a plank of wood, a long plank of wood with some padding on it. And you put that on their bad side to help give them a bit more of a boost, so that when they do move, they can go in a straight line. But the first step for this kid would be to start doing the inclined floor as much as possible. That's going to help him to develop his pattern of movement, learn how to move, while also having the help of gravity to move him down, so it's not as hard. So absolutely email me and I can help you out.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from Paulina. Since you, Gordon, are the specialist of physical development, would you suggest activities we should pick for our kids at a certain age to support them as much as possible? Brachiation is obvious.
Yeah, brachiation. So again, it depends on your child's level of development. Creeping and crawling is always great, But for older children, creeping and crawling is also good. And again, it depends on what kind of learning difficulties, if any, you're facing. But anything that engages the left and the right side of your body or focuses on one are excellent. So using a scooter, biking, kicking a ball, dribbling a basketball, throwing darts, hopping, jumping. I'll write all of these down for you, Aga, another time. Give my age and suggestion kind of thing. Running is also good. If you have a child who is maybe a toddler or 4 or 5, as much walking as possible is ideal. And we have a running program. Once your child starts to walk and starts to be more mobile, we give them a running program, and that is to try and encourage them to run as much as possible. Because when you develop the ability to run, you develop a deeper, more sophisticated level of respiration. And so the faster you can do that, the bigger their lungs will grow, the deeper the respiration, and the more oxygen to their brain and body in general as a whole. So, and then of course, swimming, basketball, tennis, basically any sport you can think of, there's no reason why you can't do that. And it's all going to be really, really good stuff.
Is your running program the same, or maybe based on that one that I found in Glenn Doman's book?
Yeah.
How old is your baby?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and there's different levels of the running program depending on your age. And then there's the walking program, the running program. Then we have the aerobic running program, which is teaching your body and your heart to exercise aerobically, and aerobically means that you're functioning at maximum aerobic function. And that means that you have the maximum saturation of oxygen in your body. So there's different levels to it. And as you get higher up on the profile, up to level 7, which is physical excellence, we move into gymnastics. We start with gymnastics with like a forward roll or a somersault and a backwards roll as early as 3, sometimes 2. We do 2-year-olds doing rolls, sometimes 2. So any kind of gymnastic stuff is also going to be excellent.
Mm-hmm. I started rolling forward roll with my daughter when she was 2.
Yeah, great. Yeah, many children do. Many children do.
On their own.
Yeah, and we have 2-year-olds doing 50 rolls a day, so as much as possible. And rolls are really good too for toddlers because it targets the vestibular area of your brain, which is balance, coordination, and orientation. So the more you can do that, the more you're kind of growing that part of their brain to get them ready for walking and running and other stuff too. Yeah.
Something has just come to my mind. Is there any connection between, rolling and things like that, and maybe prevention of travel sickness? Because
absolutely,
I suffer from this, and my daughter doesn't.
Yeah.
Sometimes I can't look down in the car. I can't read anything, and she can even
She's
look
fine.
at the book.
Yeah.
And I tried to do forward roll several times, and I feel extremely dizzy.
Well, that just tells me that your vestibular area needs more stimulation. And we treat patients, older patients who have Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, and a lot of the times one of their biggest things is balance and nausea. So starting with a log roll is the exact thing that we do with them and getting them to do rolls. So if you want to stop feeling nauseous, you should definitely do some rolls. It will develop your brain and stop your symptom.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's more of it. And just to continue this question with one more.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about balance bikes? Because once, I think maybe 2 weeks ago or a bit more, there was discussion in my group about them that some physiotherapists say that they are detrimental to child's development. And, as you know, we used it, and now my daughter can ride a pedal bike at the age of 3. So I don't know.
Good question. I love balance bikes. I think that they're such a great tool to teach the balance, the coordination. And I mean, as long as you're not using it in the place of walking, as in your child can walk just as well as they can use the bike, then there's no reason why not. And it's such a great tool to to get them ready for biking, which is good for your hemispheric dominance, and of course balance. So it's still stimulating the vestibular area because they're dealing with balance and orientation. So yeah, no problem with balance bikes.
Next question from our list, and then one from the chat. What to do about a child? Oh, again, a child with cerebral palsy who creeps and crawls. Okay, the other way around, but has problems with balance. He's 5 years old now and can't keep his balance.
So I guess I need to know whether he's walking and he can't balance very well, or whether it's balance for creeping on his hands and knees.
I don't know.
If the person who asked the question is around.
I think no. She's at work now.
Oh, that's okay. Okay, well, I'll answer anyway, and you can tell her to email me. So I can answer anyway. I can answer both ways. So the best thing is what we were just talking about, which is stimulating the vestibular area. So I would start with log rolls. And actually, the best way to do it is what we call a program that's balance development phase 2. In the book, in the Well Baby book, it's called medullary. And all it is you get a board like this, and you have a mattress on it, and then you have another mattress down here. And the board goes down, you put your child up here long ways, and then you lift the board up, and they roll down really, really fast. And they're going to go really, really fast. I can share a video with you later, Aga. And doing that as many times a day is going to be the best thing to stimulate those balance areas and help him to develop his balance. But again, depending on if he's walking or whether he's still just crawling or creeping, will depend on a bit different of an answer.
Does this board need to be long? Because we did something like this for fun, but on the sofa.
Yeah, well, I mean, the idea is that as long as she's rolling, and I have measurements for the board, and I think they're in the book as well, it just needs to be wide enough for them to lie flat, and the length doesn't really matter as long as they're getting lots and lots of rolls. And you want to do it one way and then turn them over the other way and then turn them over the other way, facing up, facing down, that kind of thing as well.
Okay, thank you. I'll tell this mom to contact you, because she hasn't given me all the details. And another question from the chat, with respect to reading, encyclopedic math, is there any ill effect overdoing it? How do we know if they are not overstimulated?
Well, as long as they are loving it, they're excited and they're interested, you are fine. You can do hundreds as long as they're interested. So as soon as you see that maybe they're perhaps not so excited, or they're not paying attention, or they look away, or maybe they move away, then you know when to stop. So double answer, I guess. 1, there's no limit, but 2, follow your child and take them as a guide. If you find that they're a bit stuck, then you can also ask them what they want to see. Interest is the best way to learn. So find out what they're interested in and go from there, and there's no stopping you.
Does it always mean that they are overstimulated if they don't want to look?
No, yeah, well, not so much overstimulated. You can't really overstimulate them. They just might be bored of the content, or they know it already, or they're just not interested. And that's okay. I mean, we're not interested in every single thing. It's okay for them to have their own preferences as well. So maybe you can start by having 2 options and saying, which one would you like? And then seeing which one they look at, or maybe they'll choose it, or maybe they'll tell you. And then you can have them involved as well. And if you keep it so that they're involved, it's going to be a fun experience, and they should never get tired of that.
Okay, thank you. Because, we had problems with attention when Maya when she started to walk. And Doman describes it as the most challenging period for parents.
Absolutely.
Because it seems they're no longer interested in the cards, but it passed. After, I just diminished the number of sessions, everything, because at the beginning I started with a really intensive program, and I just did maybe 1 session of each thing per day for a few months, and then she suddenly, when she was 2 years old, she accepted like 30 cards in 1 session.
Well, she's got new mobility. She wants to go out there and use her mobility.
Yeah, it's all more interesting. Yeah,
exactly. I think a very good rule to follow is always stop before they want you to stop. So if you always just keep them wanting more, then you're never going to have a problem. So even if they're really, really paying attention, but this is your fifth category, and they're still going, you can say, oh, that's it today. And they might go, oh, please, more. And you can say, I know, but let's do creeping and crawling, and tomorrow we can have more. So try and always stop before they're ready to stop, and then you'll always have their interest.
Yeah, and this is difficult because you are so excited if they want more.
I know.
we added maths, more and more, more dot cards.
I know, it's hard.
Okay, next one. Is there any sense to play classical music or recordings in foreign languages when a child is sleeping?
Okay, so when sleeping, I would say no for a couple of reasons. First of all, children can have auditory sensitivities. And this is the same with tactile. They can be hypersensitive or they can be hyposensitive. So especially when they're kind of under the age of 3 or 4, when they're still developing their airways, it's better to have silence for them while they're sleeping. This way you can, one, notice if they have hypersensitivities. So do they wake up when a door closes? Do they wake up when the dog barks? Those kinds of things. And if so, that will alert you to the fact that they need some stimulation with their hearing. And sometimes children, you've all probably heard it before, they only sleep to white noise, or they only sleep to the TV on, that kind of thing. That usually tells me as well that they have hypersensitivity, and that they're using those other sounds to drown out all of the other sounds that they're hearing. And when you have hypersensitive hearing, you're hearing things that we can't even perceive. We've had children on our program who have told us that they can hear the computer wires in the wall, or they can hear a drain, or they can hear a digger down the road. Crazy, crazy stuff that they can hear that we can't even perceive. So if you have a baby who can only sleep to the sound of music or something like that, then you really need to stop playing that stuff for them so that they can get used to sleeping without it. And you also need to think about doing some tactile stimulation to help fix that hypersensitivity and bring it back to normal. But I will say about classical music, we're doing a new study ourselves right now, and we're kind of developing a new program, and it's called the mesolimbic pathway. And what it is playing classical music in headphones and showing your child different smells at the same time. Because sight, hearing, taste, and smell are all connected. And smell and hearing in particular are connected to a very, very important part of your brain for creative thinking, for language, and just general ability to kind of think on the spot and be, can't think of the word, just be creative. So we're kind of developing this new program where for half an hour a day or 10 minutes a day, they listen to classical music in their headphones and they smell different things. And that is kind of like a direct line of stimulation to this part of your brain and kind of grows it. So, yeah.
Yeah, but I talked to this mom online, and I don't think she asked about this because her son has any problems, but maybe she probably thought that maybe it helps somehow to brain development if you play classical music. Of maybe that he will learn languages while sleeping, you know. So,
I think we've all heard that being said before, that play it to them when they're in the womb or play it to them while they're sleeping, and honestly I don't know enough about it to say whether that's true or not. All I can attest to is that sometimes doing that can affect auditory perception and perhaps mask some other stuff that might be going on, or perhaps delay auditory development. So I mean, if your child loves it and they start speaking in a different language, then let me know. and absolutely keep doing it if you think it helps, but just be aware of their auditory sensitivities. So if you have tuning out or delayed, or they don't kind of react to sounds immediately, then you need to think about maybe they have other stuff going on and that music can be detrimental to them at nighttime.
Okay, thank you. And I have so there is no evidence that it's it's beneficial for the brain, for the intellect. If you
I'm sure that there absolutely is. I'm sure there is, but just from my experience and Doman International, we don't have any programs, or I mean, I haven't looked into it enough, so I don't want to say yes or no. All I can say is from a standpoint of development, and if there's something else going on, maybe it's not the best thing. But again, if you have a well kid who's perfectly fine, nothing going on, I don't see any reason why you can't do that while they're sleeping. But I can't attest to any research to prove that it's beneficial. I'm sure it's nice, though. I'm sure it is probably beneficial.
But is it true that a child's brain is more absorbent just before sleeping? Because because of that, I've read about it somewhere. I every night before Maya goes to sleep, I read 3 chapters from the Bible for kids in English, and one fairy tale in Italian, which is the original version. So quite difficult one with this passato remoto and so on. And maybe because of that, every time I don't go to work, she starts day with Italian. She has morning.
Because it was the last thing she heard, maybe.
Yeah, maybe that's true.
Maybe it is, and our kind of philosophy is that, I mean, a child's brain is able to learn any new thing at any point in time, as long as you present it in a fun, factual way. So, I mean, I wouldn't know specifically if just before they go to sleep is the ideal time. I would say that any time is the ideal time, as long as you have their interest and you're doing it fun and exciting ways.
Yeah, this Italian was her idea.
Yeah.
Just got the book and she wanted to read it. She wanted me to read it instead of a Bible, and then we just started a Bible, Italian, or maybe the other way around. We continue. Okay, another question from the chat. Hi, Jordan. Question about an old problem. My child, when lied down, was in the shape of a banana till 15 months when he started to walk. I'm aware it was a brain injury. How can it influence my child in the future? He's 4.5 now.
Okay, I'm just looking at that question again. I'm going to... when lie down was in the shape of a banana. Okay, so I'm assuming that he didn't creep or crawl at all or very much, that he just kind of was immobile and then he started to walk.
Yeah, something like...
I think, yeah, pipe up if I'm wrong. So...
Is it at all possible?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would wonder what other things might be going on to kind of cause that to happen. And I'm curious as to how he is now, whether you see any massive problems from that. So, I mean, when you creep and when you crawl, you develop your midbrain. So if he did not crawl or creep very much or little, then his midbrain is going to be very, very underdeveloped. So I would absolutely recommend creeping and crawling when you can. I think he's a bit too young right now, so as much walking and fast walking, running, walking in different environments, as much of that as possible is going to be the best thing for him right now to help him continue to develop. But when he is older, you may want to think about doing creeping and crawling. I would really strongly suggest it. And if you're interested in seeing if he has any other stuff going on, I'm happy to help you figure that out. Because it would really surprise me if he didn't have other problems because of the fact that he didn't creep or crawl. And I might be completely wrong. I hope I am. Let me see. Did I get all of that question? How can it influence my challenge? Okay, so some of the ways it could affect him. He could start to have dyslexic tendencies, problems with reading. Math is also a big one. He may not be able to write properly for a while. Social skills.
Time, yes. Tell the time.
Till the time?
Because I have kids like that who can't read the clock. Yeah.
Oh, tell time. Sorry, I didn't catch what you were saying.
Tell time, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely tell time. Even just coordination. He may also have some autistic tendencies. A lot of the times with underdeveloped or damaged midbrains, we often see those typical autistic behaviors. So maybe some stimming, maybe some hyperactivity, trouble with eye contact, tactile sensitivity, sensitivity to noise, those kinds of things. So I really don't want to scare you or alarm you with that, but that's my honest opinion with what can happen if you do miss out on crawling and creeping. And again, I hope I'm wrong, and I could be wrong. Absolutely, he could be absolutely perfect now, but I do suggest crawling and creeping when he's older. Oh, he has autism. Okay, there you go. There we go. He was creeping and crawling.
Is there a way to help a child with the locomotion sickness? Yeah, so I've already mentioned it before, travel sickness, you know?
Yeah.
Instead of heady meds.
So I'm going to interrupt you. The person who posted the question I just answered has just given me a bit more information, just at the bottom of the chat. So I'm just going to talk about that first.
Yes.
So he was creeping and crawling. He crawled 6 to 10 months, sitting at 8 months, 10 months creeping, and he has autism, which doesn't surprise me. So he's 4.5 now, so there's no reason to try and creep and crawl, especially since he has got autistic tendencies. It's going to be a really tricky thing. But there are other things that I can help you with. If you wanted to email me, we would have to kind of see exactly which autistic tendencies he has, and then I can tell you the specific kind of programs that you need to do for him. The best recommendation I can give is the diet recommendations that Aga has posted for me. Autistic children are hugely sensitive to a lot of foods, and it can really affect the function of their brain and cause a lot of the hyperactive stimming behaviors as well. So yeah, contact me, please. I'd love to give you more information and get a bit more kind of background into the exact symptoms he's showing. Okay, back to you, Aga.
Yeah, sorry, reading it again. Is there a way to help a child with locomotion sickness instead of heady meds? My child vomits 5 to 6 times on a 20-minute car ride, not on a train bus.
Yeah. Same kid again. And it's the same kid again. Yeah. Absolutely, as much medullary as you can. And medullary is what I was talking about before. I'll send Aga a video of it, but it's having a board and putting them on the board and then lifting it up really fast so that they roll down that board on their stomach and onto their back kind of thing, because he needs his vestibular area stimulated, and the fact that he didn't creep or crawl very much is exactly why he's having this problem. Yeah, that's the best thing you can do. And even starting forward rolls with him as well, just helping him to do a forward roll, even you doing it for him as well is really helpful. And like I said, we can talk more about him in particular, and I can give you more kind of catered advice.
Thank you. And now maybe one from our list. How the products you have given us a list of tomatoes, bananas, gluten, citrus fruits influence the brain?
And what's the reason to limit them in our diet? Good question. Good question. And I saw that my list caused a bit of a storm. I just want to clarify that this list of foods that we recommend to take away is a temporary thing, and it's just for brain injured children or children, any child who has even the minute, the smallest of things going on, they can be affected by this, and it's not a lifetime thing. The purpose of it is so that we can see how it affects them. The list of foods, the tomatoes, the banana, the gluten, etc., those are all things that we know from the last 60 years. We know that those can affect children hugely, sometimes minutely, sometimes hugely. But we know that they have an effect. And so when you first come for an appointment with us, We say, okay, we're going to get rid of all of these things. We're going to give your child the best diet and create the perfect neurological environment. And once we do that, that's when we can really start to see the main issues, the main problems. And when you have a perfect neurological environment, your brain is functioning perfectly as it should. You don't have brain fog, you have maximum oxygenation. When you have that environment, that's when all of our programs together start to work. So even if I gave you the most intensive physical program, sensory integration program, respiration program, even if you did all of that perfectly, if you didn't change your nutrition, nothing is ever going to change, or at least be fixed to where it needs to be. So again, it's not my recommendations for every single child, but if you find that your child has something going on, behavior or autistic traits in particular, and cerebral palsy and Down syndrome, I would highly recommend doing that diet.
Is allergy related to brain injury or not
It's
really?
more intolerance. So I mean, with the 60 years that Glenn and his son Douglas, my boss, have been practicing, these are all the foods that we've found to affect children. Because when we give a nutrition program, you keep very, very detailed records, and you talk with your child, and we introduce these foods back in very slowly after 6 months. And so we've learned to know that even the tiniest bit of corn in your diet can really, really cause a big effect on your brain. So again, your child may have one intolerance to these foods. He may be intolerant to all of them. He may be intolerant to 3 or none. But it's just our best way of kind of figuring out what they are intolerant to and giving them the best chance at improving in all areas. So if you have a well kid who doesn't have any problems, any major problems, then don't worry about taking this stuff out. But I do recommend dairy and gluten-free, because that's just good for everybody's function.
But is it a good idea just to follow this elimination diet just from the very beginning? Observe the child,
Yeah,
because
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, a clean slate is the best way to see. Yeah, if you have a child and you don't feed them any of this stuff until they're older, and then you give them banana, and you can see if they start going crazy, hyperactive, or perhaps they get lethargic, and because some other things, it's not just behavior or function of brain, it's also the body as well. Some of our children, if they eat bananas, they get horrific constipation or crippling reflux, or and of course for immobile children with cerebral palsy, constipation can cause their hips to unalign, which can cause their spine to curve, which can affect their neck and their legs and their just everything. So it's not even just about fueling your body, but it's about and affecting your brain, but it's about the body as well. So there's so many different things that can happen from eating a piece of corn. And again, that's extreme, but with some kids you need to be extreme to really figure out what's going on for them.
Yeah, thank you for this explanation, because I think some parents understood it like that okay, tomatoes are bad, bananas are bad, we should all avoid them.
I know. And at our clinic in Italy, I mean, the Italian parents, we get a big group of them in for the first time, and every time they come back from their nutrition program, they're like, no tomatoes? Are you kidding? That's like what we live on here. They're always very, very upset about it. But, they get through it and they deal with it and they notice a difference. So I know it's an outrageous list, and I understand all of your comments saying this is ridiculous. It's extreme, because it is extreme. So I hope that clears it up a bit.
Well, it is extreme, but
Yeah.
it isn't for everybody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not for everybody.
Very important information. This is not the list for everybody. If you have a well kid, you don't have to avoid
Exactly.
Okay. Hi, Jordan. How to support a 3-year-old with developing conversational abilities, moving from repeating towards having better conversations? How do we support development of social skills of a child?
Okay, so first of all, conversational abilities. Assuming that it's tricky. It depends on their level of language, and I would evaluate level of language very, very specifically. So, okay, for example, a child who has 10 to 25 words and you're trying to encourage them to speak more, my best advice would be to have a language board. So every single word that your child says, you have it up on a big board. You have a circle on the board, and all the words they use all the time go in the middle. And every time they start to use a new word, you put it on the board on the outside of the circle. And the more and more they start to use it, you start bringing it into the circle. And do it along with them too. You say, oh, that was a new word. That was wonderful. Let's write it on a piece of paper together, ball, and let's put it up on the board. So that's kind of, it's a very, very, very good way that we use with children who are maybe 10 to 25 words. Maybe they have 1,000 words and a couple of couplets. Any child who doesn't quite yet have the vocabulary, it's a very, very good tool, and it helps so many kids. Another thing, language is not connected to intellect. I'm sure you guys know that, but a lot of parents struggle separating intelligence and language. For example, we have children who are reading university textbooks, but they can't speak. But they're so intelligent, but they just can't speak. So what I'm saying is language has nothing to do with your brain's knowledge of words and nothing to do with your knowing language. It's to do with respiration. And sometimes it's to do with your mouth and your nose and your ears as well. To be able to speak, you have to have a different level of respiration. And so your child may just need more opportunity to run, to walk, to crawl, to bike, to be exercising, to get more oxygen. And a big language program that we give is that BEP, the mask, which helps with respiration. I can tell you a bit more about that. So the mask essentially, and we give it out only after your doctor has okayed you for it. It essentially is making you hyperventilate because carbon dioxide makes your veins grow like this. And so you do this for a couple of seconds and then you take it off, and it's like a huge burst of oxygen straight to your brain. And we do that anywhere from 20 to 50 to 60 times a day for a couple of seconds. And that is the best thing to improve language for a child who knows all the words, is older, and just can't speak yet. So that question, I'm sorry, is a bit more specific. Your specific child and their ability may depend differently on my answer. Let me go back to the question. I think there was a second part to it.
Yeah, there was.
Support a 3-year-old with developing conversational abilities, moving from repeating words. So, I mean, repeating words is not bad. It's a stage, and it is the parroting stage, the repeating stage. She's learning how sounds work, how vowels work, how conversation works, and with her limited ability, her limited word vocabulary, that's how she has a conversation with you. So just engage her as much as possible. Accept anything she says as language. So even if you say something and she just repeats it back to you, just nod and smile and just keep on talking to her as if you're having a conversation. And that's the best way. And again, getting her to do as much moving around, as much exercise as possible to give her that deeper level of respiration so that she can move on to that next level.
Yeah, there's another part. How do we support the development of social skills?
Social skills. Okay, so we have social programs that we give, and they depend on the social needs. So it's kind of a tricky question to ask without more specific information about your child and about the social skills you're wondering about. But for example, some of our social programs are to do with behavior. And if you're just talking about being social with children and with adults, it's confidence, and sometimes it's other stuff as well. There's a huge range of things, and I'm happy to give you more specific advice. It's such a broad subject. I'm sorry, I can't answer it easily without more information.
So it's not only about meeting other kids.
Yeah, meeting other kids, I mean, maybe your child is really, really shy. They don't like to interact with those children. They prefer to stay with you. the best thing is to ignore that. Basically, the more you say hello to grandma, say hello to John, the more kind of a big deal you're making out of it, and the more pressure you're putting on them. Maybe they don't have the language to do that, and so that they're not ready, or maybe it's just confidence. But putting them on the spot is not going to help. The best thing is just to show them how they should act. So, I mean, you arrive with them and make a point of greeting every single person, talking to them, looking them in the eye, maybe shaking hands or hugging them, and show her how she needs to act. And when she has the confidence, when she has the ability, she'll start to do it on her own. And you just have to have faith. And sometimes children develop that a lot slower than others. But you just have to be supportive.
So yesterday I shouldn't have told Maya, say hello.
Yeah, I mean, she already knows that she says hello. She sees you do it 50 times a day to new people you see. She knows, oh yes, Mum says hello when she sees someone. She knows what she needs to do.
Real people, not the people.
Exactly. And I find too, the more you say hello or say goodbye or give them a hug, the more they'll want to rebel against that and not do it, because it's something that you're asking them to do. And for some children, speaking can be a very intimate thing. Maybe they only feel comfortable speaking with their family, and maybe that's because it's a new ability that they find precious and sacred, and they're not ready to share that with other people. But they will. Trust me, when they're ready, they won't shut up. So just be patient and wait for them to be comfortable.